This is Unscripted Her. One family, four voices. Smart, fun, what's really going on? Finally, our discussion unscripted. Hi everyone, this is Ellen with Unscripted Her, and we are back with our Game Changer series, the last one of the year 2020. We done made it, y'all. Praise the Lord. Well, we have been bringing voice to women of color and people from underrepresented backgrounds who are changing the game in the places where they walk. We've brought you a nuclear scientist turned mayor of a small town who is bringing economic development and clean water to her hometown of Norway, South Carolina. We've brought you a chief race and equity officer, the first ever appointed to this role in Arlington County, one of the largest metropolitan areas in the United States, who is building inclusive and equitable urban and health and economic policies right here in Washington, D.C. And now we are bringing you another game changer. I'm so excited in the entertainment and media world. She is an Emmy Award-winning producer, a radio personality, a content producer, a podcast host, an entrepreneur, a voiceover actress. I don't even know how you do it all, girl. Miss Georgette Pierre. Let's clap it up. Woo! Hey.
Hi, honey.
Oh, we are so excited to have you on our show.
Oh, thank you.
This is going to be fun. You know, when we started Unscripted Her and we started the Game Changer series, I said, we have got to have Georgette on it here because we need to give voice and inspire people on how to make it through. Because if anyone I know who could make it through a challenging time like this, it is you, girl. And you make it look easy.
Ooh, girl. I appreciate you saying that because it's not. It has not been.
So we are excited. So why don't we start it off with this? I have been loving your latest project, Black and Nuance podcast. And I love what you said about this monolithism. I don't even know if that's a word, but you know, I think about Black girl magic and how they always say, oh, you know, what we're doing is magic. You know, if you a Black girl like me or a woman who went to MIT or whatever, you know, it's not magic to me. It is hard work. It is purpose. It is drive. And I love what you're doing on your series by kind of breaking down these notions of Black people and what we're doing. Can you tell us more about your latest project?
Absolutely. So, Black and Nuance podcast, I started that in 2018 when I had moved to South Florida for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I became a radio personality at 99 Jams, which was DJ Khaled's old radio station.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had already done so many variations of a podcast, but I was like, I still need something of my own. And before I had left New York for the first time, I was like, I've been playing around with the idea of Black Nuance, Black and Nuance. And when I got to Florida, I was like, oh, we're doing Black and Nuance. But I just remember, I won't ever forget when I was in Spotify's offices in New York for some party my friend invited us to, because there was, you know, you could bounce around to people's media holiday parties when you worked in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember seeing something that like Black people aren't monolithic. And I was like, that stuck with me prior to me starting the podcast. And I was like, no, I'm going to do a podcast called Black and Nuance, where we seek to dispel the idea that all Black people are not monolithic, right? So fast forward, I'm doing the podcast traditionally. Pandemic hits. I leave New York for 4 months because I moved back to New York last September. I leave New York for 4 months from March to July. And I was like, okay, well, I haven't done my podcast since I moved back to New York. I got to figure something out. And I loved what everybody was doing. Like Genius was doing video content and they had it souped up, like all this graphic background. I was just like, well, how do I do that? So shout out to ABB Video Productions and Andre Banks. Like I knew him and his brother from high school, linked up with him. And I was like, I'm going to do a video series version of my podcast. And so what people have been seeing is Black and Nuanced in HD, just kind of a pun on just watching something in HD. And I started taking my video, like my episodes, and just making them more visual. I just felt like that was where we are now. And I wanted to kind of move in that space. And I wanted to elevate the podcast. I was like, this is the direction I need to move into. And so what you'll be seeing is more of that. I released Black and Nuance in HD the first time in June,
Okay.
but there was so much happening, Ellen. Like Black bodies were being killed at rapid rates. My rollout was trash. I didn't have my friend on board on my team as my digital marketing consultant or digital consultant for how I should roll things out. So I was like, you know what? I rolled out my first series. Let's roll this out properly. So I was like, I'm going to rerun this and then add new episodes in between. And so that's what people are seeing now.
Girl, you are such the creative and so good at what you do when it comes to like content and producing and the way that you think that out. So you shot this before COVID and then you released it during COVID?
No, I literally shot it during COVID. I was literally sitting in my old childhood bedroom and I was just like, okay, I got my wig and a hat and some clothes. I just need to, plan the outfits out on Zoom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I filmed the episodes in May.
Okay.
I filmed the episodes in May and then I released it in June.
Okay, well, I can tell you it's definitely been helping a lot of us get through COVID. And I like the diversity, the men, the women, and everybody you've had on there. So keep bringing that content because we're loving it. So Black and Nuance, I know it's on IG. I watch it on IGTV.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's where I go to get it. So
yeah, and it's on my website, GeorgettePierre.com. I got to update it because I've been doing IGTV because I feel like that's where everyone lives. It is on ice until the new year because I'm just like, ain't nobody watching anything new. I don't, I want to maximize the eyeballs. And I know you have to treat content scheduling just like you do with work scheduling. So it's the holidays now. My last episode for the year with Carl Seaton, who's a TV and film director, that aired Tuesday.
Yeah.
So that's in the first week of January after the new year.
I didn't know how much he was doing. So shout out to him. I was like, oh, he's on every show. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And the difference I did this time too, Ellen, I'm so grateful for my friend Steven. When I rolled it out in a sloppy way. But this time with me re-rolling it out and adding new episodes, I'm now doing the IGTV follow-up element, right? Like the lives where now we can actually talk to them and kind of follow up and plug back into like when our conversation happened a few months ago to what's happening now.
Nice. I like that approach too. I don't know, we might have to incorporate something like that here, but I did see that because I was watching some of the follow-ups first and then going back to watch the episode. So you have managed to stay busy during 2020 during this crazy, y'all know I don't cuss, but if I would, that word year. But let's talk about 2020 because I know for many of us, it has been one of the hardest years, that we can recall in our lives. And, I can speak personally. We've had some loss that has been very hard for us to cope with as a family. Even the children's having an impact on. And then, of course, you have COVID. And my heart, I'm sure yours too, goes out to everyone who's been impacted by this really a travesty to me, I don't just say it's a pandemic. I say this is a travesty because to me, a lot of the deaths could have been prevented. With all that has gone on in 2020, I would like to hear from you. What has been your biggest challenge during this year?
For me, it was a couple of things. I say this jokingly or cheekily. I live in the greatest city in the world, right? I live in New York City. I'm not from New York, but all jokes aside, like I have always been drawn to New York. And the one thing that anyone knows if you live in New York is paying your rent or mortgage, right? Keeping that roof over your head. So my biggest concern was like when I got back to New York, I wanted to maintain my New York lifestyle, had to pay rent. And I also didn't want to regress, Ellen, to being on unemployment again, like I was 7 years prior. When I was on unemployment, by the grace of God, I was able to sleep on a friend's couch who I lived in Union Square at the time, which is a really expensive area. But like she allowed me to stay on her couch, so I never had to leave New York, to come back into New York, right? Because the barrier to entry into New York is tough, and I was determined not to leave the city.
I like that term, barrier into entry. We use that.
Yeah, the barrier to entry into New York is serious. So if you left, there's a chance that you may not be able to get back in unless everything aligned. And so stayed with her for about 3 months. And fast forward, being on unemployment again, it made me nervous, but I had to recalibrate my thought process and not lean into the fear of of like, oh my gosh, unemployment. Like, no, Georgia, unemployment looks differently. And so, you know, I was able to tap into my family, like my parents more so. The fact that I was able to be at my mom's house for 4 months really just forced me to sit my ass down somewhere. You really couldn't leave, or there was like this risk that you could catch Rona.
Yeah,
And
I read it was real.
It was.
Real.
You know, April was the deadliest month for New York, and I was still driving to my apartment once a month to check on it, get some clothes. But the most clarity and discernment, or the beginning of the clarity and discernment that I started gaining, happened at my mom's house. And so, you know, just maintaining what life will look like after we get out of the red, and we eventually got out of the red, at least for New York, temporarily. And so, yeah, I mean, you know, I had started another company, girl, and I was just like, what am I doing? Like, I was just doing knee-jerk things to keep busy, and that's not what I was supposed to be doing. So, you know, I made some mistakes along the way, or learned some lessons, but I just, it had to happen during those times.
So you said something that was very interesting. You got some phrases, girl. You just said, I had to recalibrate my process and not lean into my fear. We need that in quotes, okay? I need that in a painting. I need that in a frame or something on a canvas. I need that on my mugs. Y'all know I bring my mugs. That was good. Recalibrate my process and not lean into my fears. That's a takeaway for 2020, okay? That thing right there will preach.
Seriously, because it's easy to because we're on autopilot, right? With the way we think about things. And so for me, it was just like, well, I know what unemployment looked like in New York 7 years ago. That can't happen again, right? And so my mind is just like, well, we can lean into the worst possible scenario, or worst case scenario, but it's the same amount of energy if you lean into the best case scenario. So which scenario do you want, Georgette? I was just like, well, I'm not leaving New York. And that's that. And so I was able to pay my rent, sometimes pay my rent early, Ellen. And I don't ever pay my rent early. I pay it on time. And on time is like the first, the second, the third, right? But I was paying my rent like a week ahead of time because I had the money. And at the time, I didn't have to tap into my savings, because that was also a big goal of mine. I was like, I don't want to tap into my savings to pay my rent for my old apartment. And sure enough, that was what reigned true for me.
Right, right. Well, something else you said, you know, you keep saying you were headed back to New York. So you were someplace else before New York. And, you know, I know the story, but I definitely want to share it with people because I think that is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on this show, is because you find a way to reinvent yourself. Like you just said, I was starting this business. And I understand you said like those weren't things you're supposed to be doing. But at the same time, like you just said, you lean into the positive scenario. You find a way to reinvent yourself while staying rooted in your purpose, which is really using your voice to share stories or bring light, you know, to people doing things in the entertainment or the creative space, which is awesome. So what brought you back to New York?
So 2018, I felt like I hit a glass ceiling. I was working in TV production, traveling back and forth to LA to the point where people thought I actually lived there. And like, it was just like this lifestyle. You said what?
I thought you lived in LA.
Oh, I know. There were some things that you said. I was like, oh, she thought I lived in LA. I'm like, no.
Yeah, when I was going out to LA for business, I was like, oh yeah, Georgette will be there. She lives in LA. I was like, I guess she lives in LA and New York. I didn't know.
The bi-coastal lifestyle that I wanted was real. And then I kind of turned down on LA after a while. But I was working in production management for Viacom, specifically at Nickelodeon. And I was kind of tired. I was tired of production management life. Like, yes, you all see me eating at Catch LA, staying at the London West Hollywood Hotel in Beverly Hills, West Hollywood.
You got Nobu. You saw my pictures. Okay. You were like, I know you eat.
Nobu, girl, every restaurant that everyone went to in LA, I would tap that quickly because I didn't have to pay for it. But I was just like, Georgette, what is it? One day I remember coming back to my old apartment when I had a roommate. I said, if you had no fear, what would be the next thing you would do? And the one thing that came to mind was radio. I was like, well, Georgette, you never pursued radio hard body. When I left college radio in Boston at Emerson College, I naively and egotistically was like, I want to make it in the number one market, which is New York. But no one ever jumps from college radio to the number one market, right? But you couldn't tell me that. So I was like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And you're right. But I ended up leaving radio alone, jumped into TV. So by the time I got to the end of the road for TV for me in 2018, I started focusing on where I wanted to go. I locked in. I was like, that's what I was looking for, locked in. I locked into what needed to be next. So I had done some stuff for the NBA 2K league that was inaugural. They basically created a fourth league for their video game or for their gamer community. And there was this guy I had met that was in Miami, and everyone kept talking about like Miami is the next New York. I was like, nothing's the next New York. So I locked in. I said, well, let me New York. New York is New York, Miami's Miami. Well, sure enough, I started like locking into the positions in South Florida. I was like, let me see what's up with Miami, some other major markets. And I did informational interviews, and the woman that hired me, she ended up calling me back. An opportunity presented itself. It was a part-time opportunity, but I said yes to it, and I left New York for a year. Well, when I went down there, Ellen,
I remember when you went down too, because you drove, girl. You were like, I'm driving to South
the auto train.
I remember, I was like, tell me when you get there, girl. That's a long drive.
Amtrak. So I did the Amtrak auto train that let me off in Sanford, Florida, and then I drove 4 hours down to Miami. And when I went down there, the opportunity, the work culture environment was nothing like I expected. It was actually, it was just not ideal. I'll just say that it wasn't ideal. So what was amazing and what I started to realize when I left is like I became, I befriended Ricky Smiley because I was the local host for his morning show at the time when it was on that station before it moved to another station, which was an older demographic. I met some other people. I got my voiceover reel up. All these different things led to other things that happened that I'm sure you're going to ask me about later on my journey. So I left after a year. I locked in. I was just like, nah, I'm not staying down here. This is not where I need to be. I thought radio is what I wanted. Cool. But sometimes you have to understand where you're being led. Yeah. I thought I was going to be down there for 3 years because I was just like, Georgette, radio, you can do this. And I had to stomach living in Florida. And I was like, this ain't it. When I left after a year, Ellen, I realized I wasn't supposed to stay there longer than the time that I was down there. Yeah. And so that when I created this this digital series for them, it was the first series I was able to create on behalf of a company. And I was like, let me shoot back to New York. A Black woman who was my former boss at Nickelodeon looked out for me, made my way back to New York, and I didn't look back. And so I started planting more seeds on the things that I really wanted to do. And it led me back to my happy place of content creation. I was just like, radio's cool, but there's a business side of radio that people don't see. I started in radio, doesn't mean I have to stay in radio, or maybe there's other opportunities where I want to use my voice. Well, I podcast now. I have web series. People bring me on to talk or do public speaking engagements. So there was other means of how God was using my voice for my purpose.
Yeah, one of the verses that I like, and I have in a picture frame upstairs is Proverbs 3:5, and it says, lean not to your own understanding, but acknowledge God and God will direct your path. And I think sometimes, it's good to try things. We want to do new things and try new experiences, and we think, oh, this is what I should be doing. And we go after that opportunity. God opens that door and you're there. But what is so awesome is what happened to you is that God will start to show us in our journey that maybe that place isn't the destination. We are just there for an appointed time, for a lesson, for a connection, for a growth opportunity. And so much can come out of that experience. I had an experience in 2019 where I thought I was going to be, this corporate executive on Wall Street. And I was like, this is it, a Black woman on Wall Street, honey. Yes, I have made it. I'm flexing this MBA. And off I went to go do this and be a chief officer at a firm. And to your point about the environment, I learned that environment wasn't for me. Mm-hmm. But what was so amazing, and even at the time I was sort of frustrated, why am I here? And did I give up? Because I had another opportunity that I gave up for to be in this position, and I was getting very frustrated about it. But what I have learned was I actually was able to go back to my old opportunity after I left the position on Wall Street. And my experience from Wall Street the work that I was doing, the companies I was working with in my role, the stuff I was doing to run and operate a company, I'm now able to apply those lessons where I am now. And because I have that
Mhm.
experience, it's leading to more opportunities where I am now. And it's opened up so many doors for me professionally. And the lessons that I've learned have helped me in the role now where I'm working on strategy and growth in the corporate sector and working in the venture space and working on diversity and inclusion. It all came like to fruition. And so, that journey, which had me in New York, where that environment wasn't where I needed to be, even though I thought like this is it. Yes, I am here. I look back and I'm like, everything that I learned in that role prepared me and equipped me to the opportunity that I have now, which I also realized I needed to go. I wanted to stay in my old opportunity. I left and came back, and that was on purpose. That's because God was opening up a door while I
Mhm.
was away, learning and growing and being stretched. So I really appreciate you sharing that journey about, radio and, that environment. It wasn't where you needed to be, but what you learned from there and how the connections that you made so that you get back to your purpose. So thank
I
you.
mean, and absolutely. The funny thing is, like, in the moment, we're just like, oh yeah, no, this ain't for me. But
Yeah.
it's always where you need to be. It's just not necessarily for the time frame that you think it's supposed to be,
Mhm.
right? And yeah, I mean, it opened. Man, I mean, Ellen, I was going through it. Anyone that knew me at the time, like, I was over it. I was over it, and I mean, like, nights that I would cry.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
there's people I got closer to. Um, and then I was a brand new woman. I was back to myself when I left. Ooh, when I
Yes.
left, honey.
I
When I
I
left.
know, girl, I'm with you there. I thought I had made it, but those nights crying,
Yes,
I was just like, "What did
yes,
I do?" My husband was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "I don't know," and it was just,
yep,
I'll admit it, I felt depressed at times. I was like, "What is
yep,
this?"
same.
I felt so
Mhm,
blindsided, and like you said, when I got out and got in the place that I need to be, I felt like, as a former dancer, I was just going around shimmying, I was passeing, I was shenanigans, I was twirling, I might have even done a little Meg the Stallion. Okay, I was excited. I was so happy. But I
okay.
realized, like, I'm so grateful for that opportunity that I did have on Wall Street, for the person that I did work for, because he taught me a lot. He stretched me, he pushed me. So even though at times, it was tough. It definitely
Yeah.
the toughest work environment I had ever been in. I'm grateful for the opportunity and the experience. So
I mean, the last point too, and you make a great point, is like, listen, I'm not going to discount how rough it was, but I'm also not going to discount that the lessons that I learned. Because lessons aren't just like, oh my gosh, like, yes, I learned all these lessons about myself and stretching and growing. I also know, as an entrepreneur and a woman that's going to be managing people, how I want to show up. And
yes,
so when you're in environments where you're being managed by people that where it just doesn't fit or it can be toxic to the environment, what how would you show up when you manage people? And those were some of my takeaways too. I was like, oh, okay, like, I know how I want to lead people, I know how I want to encourage people, I know how I want to inspire people, and it doesn't look like this. And sometimes you just have to be in those moments to see the things. But I don't take any of those moments for granted. Like, I'm in a better space now. Even though in the moment, like, I was cussing everything down, I
right.
was like, God, I see what you did. I see what you did, because it led to other things that man, ooh, yes.
So let's talk about that. You left Florida, you came back to New York, and I touched about this earlier. Always finding a way to reinvent yourself while staying rooted in your purpose. And from what I know about the entertainment industry, it is cutthroat. I mean, I work in corporate America. I've worked on Wall Street. It's cutthroat too. But your industry really is like what Tyra said. I feel like one day you're in, one day you're out. And you're always
Mm.
having to figure out a way to either redefine yourself or to tell your story, to get your voice out there. It just seems very cutthroat. And with you've always, you started a new business, started a new podcast, you've done film, TV, radio. Now you're doing some voiceover work. How do you manage to keep going and make it look easy? I mean, you're telling people you are upset or whatever, everyone's frustrated. I mean, you make it look easy. You make it look effortless. can you help us out? Because we want to know. I might grab my notepad and start taking some notes.
That's so funny that, I don't even really realize and think about like how people see my movement and my journey. And so it's so funny, like when we were offline about this interview, you're like, yeah, girl, you think this was easy? I was like, do I? Do I now? Because help me out. For me, and I don't necessarily know this is the best habit to have. I would always go, Ellen, even though there were points that I needed to sit still. And because there's always something running through me with content creation and ideas and things I want to share and tell my story in different ways, in my mind, like, you just figure it out, right? Like the moments I want to go to sleep, it's like, no, Georgette, you got this interview to do, but after that, like, rest up, or
Right.
it's always a treat for me. And so when I did the podcast got to a point where it was turnkey, right? But I know how to produce. I know how to write scripts. I know how to write outlines and things of that nature. It's just me, like, plug and play. Like, who do I want on? Bring them in.
Emmy Award winner.
Yes. Okay. And that shout out to my former boss / mentor who made sure my name was on that list when they submitted it for an Emmy at Nickelodeon. But it's you gotta want it more than you're afraid of it, and then more than you being lazy about it, right? And I mean, and I'm not saying there's a difference between being lazy and then giving yourself grace, right? And I think a lot of times during the pandemic, we had to offer and extend more grace to ourselves than we probably have. And I'm usually hard on myself, Ellen, but there was nothing else going on. Like, there was nothing Georgette, you have nothing left to do but to plant the seeds for this media empire of yours.
Yep.
So when I got back to my mom's house, it just made no sense to just not do anything. So after I got past the phase of sleeping all day, all night, I just plowed away. So I was like, okay, Georgette, plant the seeds for Black and Nuance. Plant the seeds for After Dark rollout that you filmed 3 years ago and last year. Plant the seeds for the next thing. How do you want to rebrand GeorgettePierre.com? That got like, all these things happened only because, like, I started laying the framework already. And that's the only thing I can really say. Like, I know a lot of times, like, people want to just like get from 0 to 60 and like, yeah, I'm done. But like, framework has to be laid down. And I think what people haven't seen, like when they think overnight success, I put in my 10,000 hours, still putting in more hours, but my framework has already been laid down. Like, y'all aren't always going to see the framework laid out, right? Unless you've been following my journey, but lay the foundation, and then start building upon it one thing at a time. The one thing my friend Stephen had to remind me of, the one that does my consulting, he was like, okay, we're doing After Dark, but this is what you're doing only for the next few weeks. You're not bringing anything else into this. Like, because I had to focus. But when I did it, everybody was like, After Dark, After Dark, After Dark. Georgette, oh my gosh, After Dark, right? And so once we finished After Dark, boom, I teased Black and Nuance video series. Now we're in the middle of Black and Nuance. Well, there's some more stuff that's about to go down in 2021, God willing. Then we're going to move into that, right? So it's just
wait. But take it back.
One thing after the next, but really allowing each thing to breathe. And I used to not do that. So what I would say the biggest thing is, like, lay the foundation, then be patient in the process of you building the things.
You just said so many good things. I really wish I was taking notes, but thank goodness we're recording this. Lay the foundation, take your time. You also said something like, don't lean in to your afraidness or into your fear.
Oh, yes. So the quote is not my quote. So, and I added a piece to it, but it's I think this was, I know this is not a popular opinion, this man, but I think this is Bill Cosby's quote prior to all the things that came out about him. Sure. But it was like, want it more than you're afraid of it. You gotta want it more than you're afraid of it. And then I added the piece of like, and also want it more than you are lazy about it, right? Like, it's easy to be like, I just want to lay out and do nothing. Well, then nothing is done.
I see. Yeah. And I also like, because those of us who are those type A's that, are juggling all those balls, we have in the creatives, we have so many ideas and so much we want to do. And it's like, oh, I could do this, and this. And especially in 2020 with COVID, you're in the house, you're thinking, okay, let me work on this project. But that reminder of, one thing at a time, ordering your steps, I think it's just a really powerful reminder that you can do it. There's another saying, I don't know who said this, but I've heard it said in many ways, you can do everything, just not at once. So
Yep. Yep.
I
You can
love
have it all. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
At the same time, yeah.
let's talk about what you're currently working on now. So I saw on IG that you mentioned it briefly, that you're doing voiceover work now. I've always
Yeah.
loved your voice. I've always thought your voice was
Thank
cool. I was
you.
like, girl, sis got a dope voice here. Okay. So shout out to you and your voice, okay? Because it's special. And it's warm like you actually. So, you know,
Oh, thank you.
so with that, can you tell us about what you're doing now with the voiceover work? Because now we just added, the 20th thing to your stellar resume.
So funny. I was very insecure about my voice when I was younger. I used to get mistaken for a boy
Mhm.
or a male. I still get called sir on customer service phone calls. I'm like, it's ma'am, but I don't feel a ways about it anymore. I used to be insecure about it. I'm just like, no, it's ma'am. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. It's okay. Let's keep it moving, right? Like, let's get to the things that we need to get to on this customer service call.
Mhm.
So it's funny that my voice led me to being part of my purpose. The voiceover stuff, so going back to Miami, connecting the dots. So I was voicing commercials, and I was being real adamant about voicing commercials. And when I knew I was leaving, like I was like snatching all the things up, like copies of my stuff. And I cut a voiceover reel. And so when I got back to New York, like January, something was like I was doing some board opping for a radio personality that I met in Miami, but he had a syndicated show in New York. So something was like, Georgette, take these voiceover classes. I don't know why, just take these voiceover classes. I was like, okay, cool. So I ended up taking 2 classes. And then I took a voiceover showcase. So voiceover talent showcase. So there were 6 agents, right? 6 agents that everyone got to showcase in front of individually.
Okay.
Well, me being who I am,
I was like,
I
you
said,
be
well, me being me, right? Everyone had access to the same scripts. So I was
uh-huh.
just like, pause. I ain't doing that. Like, we use the same scripts in the same classes. This is coming from the same studio. I'm gonna find my own scripts. I'm gonna rehearse that, and that's what I'm gonna bring to the table.
Mhm.
So I emailed everyone after we were done, like that's how you do the follow-up. Only one talent agent got back to me. Well, fast forward, I didn't have voiceover equipment, all that stuff. Thanks to Rona, being at my mom's house, got my equipment. They locked me in. They started sending me auditions, but they didn't sign me yet, right? Started working with me. Imposter syndrome had kind of creeped in. And I locked in my first voiceover gig, still not being signed to them. But the first voiceover gig, this is why I'm just like, God was showing off, honey, and I am not mad. I voiced the
I will
character on
do it.
NBA 2K. Right. I voiced the character on NBA 2K21 Next Gen game that came out with the PS5 and the Xbox X.
Yeah.
And I couldn't say anything about it. It was before my birthday. That was my birthday present.
Mm.
It came out in November, and I signed with my talent agency that I have now in September. So fast forward to the question that you asked me as far as what I'm working on. A lot of times I'm signing NDAs. And
Mhm.
so there is something that I worked on that was an end of the year animated video. Can't tell you the company because I'm still waiting for more information on being able to release it. But like that's what's happening for at least hopefully this year. Next year, because we're planting seeds now. We're planting seeds. But for next year, I would love to be locked into my first animated character for a series, right?
Mhm.
More video games, obviously building my media empire. But yeah, the voiceover stuff, like I would love to be full-time voiceover by next year, still doing all the other things I want to do, right? But full-time voiceover will be dope.
Well, I love that. And I'm so glad that there is a platform for your voice and that you follow that passion. And it's amazing that the one thing that sometimes we get discriminated on is the one thing, it's our special power. I always say that our uniqueness is our special power because it's the one
Mhm.
thing that I have that you don't have. And you copy,
Mm-hmm.
you can't imitate it. You can try, but you don't have it. It's uniquely me. And so the fact that you were able to use your superpower, which is your incredible voice, and I'm excited because my bonus, he loves video games. So I can't wait to have him watch video games and play so I can hear your voice on the video game. And then we also got the animation series. I was thinking to my head, I was like, "Ooh, is it kid friendly? Is it adult? What is it?" Because we got some kids around here. They watch animation. We got adults too. So I'm excited to see when that drops.
Amen. I was receiving, Matthew Sherry came out with Hair Love, and so they are doing a series for HBO Max. I think they call it, what are they calling it? I forgot what the name is. That is actually what I would love to voice. I would love to get a character when they start filming or recording that series for HBO Max. That's like, throwing that out there.
Follow him on Instagram. We're gonna
yes, Matthew H. Sherry, yes.
add everything we can. Okay, so you hear that, Georgette Pierre? Okay, she is in the running. So I love. You kind of touched on this. Going to 2021, and you kind of already answered this for us. But Georgette Pierre, right now we have the budding voice, actress star. I'm just like you said. You plant seeds. I'm a claim it. Where do you see yourself in 2021? Let's say we're having the same conversation, at the end of next year. Where are you now?
Media Empire Foundation is flourishing in a healthy romantic partnership with a cis hetero Black man that respects and honors me, myself, himself, Black women, Black people. I will have my first TV series would have been picked up by a streaming service.
Okay.
My After Dark with Georgette Pierre will also be streaming on streaming services as well. And wherever, planting the seeds and getting my coins together to buy my New York City penthouse.
Okay.
So I'll be laying the foundation by the end of next year to buy in 2022, God willing. But wherever else God sees fit, right, as it relates to my goals. But my goal for my media empire is to lay the foundation to support other Black creatives that feel like they haven't been able to get just their foot in the door with anything related to what they want to do. Because sometimes you just feel like that barrier to entry into the entertainment industry or to different parts of what you want to do, like TV, radio. Like it's just, we're not the gatekeepers unless we create these empires, these outlets to be the gatekeepers to let our people in. And so that's been on my heart for eons. It's grad school. And so, yeah, man, building on that media empire, and then all the other things will sprout from that.
Oh, I love that. Okay. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Amen. Because you work so hard. You follow your purpose. You make smart moves. You're business savvy. You pay attention not to just your role, but when you're in that role, you pay attention to the whole environment. You pay, like you said, when you were in radio, you pay attention to the operations. You pay attention to what's going on from a corporate perspective. What is the team dynamic? So all those, that's my background business. All those other nuances that show up when we're, I work as a consultant, but I also work in, strategy and operations. So, all those nuances that occur, you're paying attention to, and you're able to see all the pieces of the puzzle and fit yourself in there. And I just know that you're going to be able to build that successful empire. And I love that, you're going to open up doors for other people. Empowered people empower people. And I can honestly say, I've gotten to where I am through hard work, yes, but also because I had a mentor or someone who had gotten there before me, who extended their hand and said, I recognize what you're doing, your hard work. You've made a way for yourself. And I'm in a place of power. I'm in a place of, we call it in business, we say, who are the decision makers? Who are the decision makers? I'm in a place where I can open up a door, I can make a decision. And so putting yourself in the place, what I hear as a decision maker, but then you can open up doors for the future Georgettes, or whoever is coming, beside you and behind you, is just such a powerful and awesome thing to do, as women, as people of color, as people from underrepresented backgrounds. So I'm excited to see. I just have one more question, because you've just shared so many good things and how you have made it through. So what was your 2020? Everyone talk about how tough this year is. Like I said, we've made it to the end. I'm grateful to God. Someone was asking me the other day, they were like, what do you want for Christmas? And I was like, honestly, just some peace right now. And like, just some freshness, because this year it's been tough for us all. So what was your biggest lesson, you would say, that you learned through this year that's going to carry you to the next year?
I don't necessarily know if it was one. There was a spiritual awakening and moment that happened that was the catalyst for a lot of things that I realized that I had to unpack. And so, but there was a lot of emotional trauma, Ellen, that was lingering that I didn't realize that I had to deal with. And so for me, the biggest lesson that I remember hearing so clearly was I had to learn to let things go.
Okay.
I was holding on to so much. And I think it crossed all areas of my life, from relationships, situationships, to career things, right? Like you felt slighted or blindsided. Yeah, like certain things, I was just like, I know they didn't let me go. Like, what? So there was all these things that I just didn't allow myself to process. So letting go was learning to let things go.
Right.
Was one thing. And then I started allowing myself to feel again. There was a situation that happened in college that I didn't realize was traumatic. And I just started reconnecting with my body. And so I was kind of on autopilot and not allowing myself to feel anything. And it's just like, no, sit and feel the things, Georgette, and process, learn to process and be one with who you are and what's going on emotionally and spiritually, and then learn to let that shit go. Like that's what it really was. And as simpleton as it could sound, Ellen, it's not for someone like this alpha female that is a type A, that's OCD at times. Like, it's just, I always wanted to be in control. That was the third thing. I had to learn to relinquish control. God was like, yeah, you need to stop. You need to stop. So learning to let things go, learning to relinquish control, and learning to feel again, like reconnecting with myself emotionally and spiritually and physically.
Sis, that was good. That was a way to end, because if anything, like we've learned anything from this year, there are some things we can't control.
Absolutely.
We cannot control this virus. I mean, people in power certainly could have made better decisions, but we couldn't control the impact, right? We just couldn't. And now that we've been through so much during this year, and even before this year, right? Because this is just 1 year, if you think about it. All of us personally have had other issues to deal with throughout our life. Learning to let it go. For those that are listening, let it go. Gosh, that's powerful right there. And then move on. Move on with purpose. Okay, well, we're going to end it there, but I want to stop and give you a chance to please plug up your shows. Let our folks know where they can follow you, your website, where they can get your content and your material. So please tell our people if they want to learn more about you and hook on to some of your shows. Where can they find out more information?
Yes, and before I say that, Ellen, I really think what you all are doing with Unscripted Her is so dope. The lineage of Black women just really leading the charge. Like you deserve, okay? So like, let's be clear about that. Thank you for what you all are doing. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you all do next as well. But with that being said,
you got me blooded.
Yes, GeorgettePierre.com, all the things. I've been really owning and excerpting my life on Instagram. So After Dark with Georgette Pierre, Black and Nuanced podcast, the video series is on IGTV. So you can find me at Georgette Pierre on Instagram, Black Nuanced Pod on Instagram, Twitter, just Georgette. But if you type in GeorgettePierre.com, it will lead you to the things, to the other things, and where the other things live. So
Google and find her.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, y'all. And of course, you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, on Facebook, and also on our website, unscriptedher.com. Thank y'all. We'll see you next time. Bye.
This is Unscripted Her. One family, 4 voices.